On Trial, the government narrative of events. This is a typical VG diagram used by pilots to determine aircraft performance. Each aircraft has its own VG diagram, or one can be constructed using the V-speeds established by the manufacturer. As you can see, the flight envelope is defined by V-speeds and G-load limits. V-speeds are set by the manufacturer based on wind tunnel and flight testing. G-loads are set by standard limits set by the FAA for type aircraft. Manufacturers design a prototype, place it in a wind tunnel, and test the airframe efficiency and performance. Maneuvering speed is noted as VA. This speed is critical, as any speed above VA could cause structural damage or failure, depending on maneuvering. Any speed below VA, and the aircraft will stall, thereby not jeopardizing the structural integrity of the airframe. VA is mostly referred to as VRA on large airliners. VRA is rough air penetration speed. As a passenger, when aircraft enter turbulence, you probably noticed the seatbelt sign turned on, perhaps an announcement made by the pilots, and then the aircraft slowing down. This is so they do not damage the airplane. The pilots are slowing down below the aircraft VRA, rough air penetration rated speed. VRA for the 767 is 290 knots, 220 knots below the speeds reported for the airplane, which was observed to strike the South Tower. The next speed is VMO, the maximum operating limit of the aircraft. This speed is determined through margin of safety calculations mandated by the FAA, based on VD. VD is the end of the flight envelope and the start of the structural failure zone for every airplane certified. Jet pilots are not given the VD speed of their aircraft in their performance books, as the manufacturers do not want line pilots anywhere near the VD for their airframe, and this is why. Manufacturers increase speeds during wind tunnel testing until buffeting is observed or other limits are reached, such as flutter, control issues with respect to center of gravity versus center of pressure, and so on. At the onset of these issues, VD is then established for that particular airframe. Test pilots then go out to test the actual aircraft to see if they can really achieve those speeds. If experiencing the onset of the issues discussed prior to the VD established in the wind tunnel, VD is then lowered, thereby affecting and lowering the aircraft VMO through safety margin calculations. Or the airframe is modified to achieve a higher VD with success. VD is a hard limit, meaning there is no additional margin of safety above VD. G-load limits do have a safety factor of 150% after manufacturer test, but as it concerns aircraft speed, VD is the end of the flight envelope and the start of the structural failure zone. This does not mean an aircraft will fall apart 1 knot over VD. However, many aircraft have suffered structural failure prior to VD. A good example is American Airlines Flight 587. According to reports, the airplane lost its vertical stabilizer at departure speeds due to maneuvering. Some aircraft have also exceeded VD, but not by much. Anyone who flies an aircraft beyond such a limitation is now considered a test pilot, as such speeds are never tested during certification. However, based on precedent, we can see the limitations set by the manufacturer are pretty accurate. In 9/11 World Trade Center attack, pilots for 9/11 Truth discussed the Egypt Air 990 crash. It was determined that Egypt Air 990 suffered in-flight structural failure just 5 knots into the structural failure zone, as determined by Boeing, and as defined by the Illustrated Guide to Aerodynamics. The aircraft, which was observed to hit the South Tower, was traveling 90 knots into the structural failure zone of a standard 767 and 150 knots over a standard 767 max operating limit.